Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Frame Found Podcast. I am your host, Chris Tinsley, and for this week's episode, the general, I guess you could call it like a theme is, this is just like what I wrote down here. The way you correct someone changes like everything. This is almost going to be like we'll call it like a shameless jiu-jitsu like episode. You guys all know that I kind of gravitate towards like jiu-jitsu just because I think it's a really good. There's a lot of good analogies when it comes to like work and complex things in general. So I always like to draw a parallel to them, and I feel like for this episode and just like looking at this outline, like that I wrote. Just a lot of parallels to this, so I figured, I don't know, just wanted to tell you just at the start of this episode that it's just going to be a shameless episode, drawing a lot of analogies to jiu-jitsu. So I'm kind of like just like looking back at this reminder, like so to speak, of why I wanted to like do this episode. And it's just, I think just what I want to talk about in this episode is just the way that you teach somebody, like the specific way in which you do it changes everything. And so what I mean by that is, maybe I'll just kind of contextualize it a little bit with where the inspiration of this episode came from. Was I was at class, I don't know, maybe like last week or something like that. And, there was this guy, maybe like mid-20s or something, or like mid-20s or so, and he was trying to tie his belt. And like I looked over and like he's like a brand new like white belt. And so and kudos to him for having the courage to ask me, because I know that like that's never, more actually, even as I'm thinking about it right now, I'm like, wow, like really great on him that he had, I don't know, like the courage or the humility or something like that. So like ask something like that, like that's really cool on him. Because I've seen a lot of other people that are just like cocky, like people, and they'll never ask for help. And then it's always a funny thing when you see like the belt that is tied like in like a crazy way. I mean, as a white belt, we've all like gone through that before. But just even thinking about it, like, wow, that was like really cool that he even asked. But anyways, he asked me, and I stood next to him so I could show him, like, you do this, like this side over this side, this through here, then pull, right? And it was cool to just, it was cool that he asked me that. It was cool that I got to like show him that. And then when he tied his belt, I could just see on his face that he was just like kind of excited or like happy or felt more comfortable. And it was like, okay, cool. Like, have a great class, and, welcome to the team, like, so to speak. So anyways, I walk out and I grab my attendance card or whatever, right? And then the same guy's standing right next to me. And I forgot how he asked it. Like basically what he asked was, like, how does this work, essentially? And I remember I asked him, and I was like, is this your first day? And he's like, it's technically my first day after my trial class. And then I looked at his card, and then it like clicked in my head, because I think I was late, so I was trying to like move fast. And I looked down at his card, I was like, okay, I got it. Like, this is literally your first day. Okay, here's what you can expect. So we're gonna go upstairs. It's a GB1 class, which is a fundamentals class. You can just, when you go up, you're gonna wanna take off like your sandals or your shoes, just whatever. You'll bow, walk onto the mat. You can just sit wherever you want and just kind of like stretch out or whatever. And then eventually the professors are going to come in, and they're going to ask you to like line up in like ranking order. Make sure that you're at the very end of the line just because you are brand new. And then we'll do the stretches. And so like as I'm telling him all of this, he's like nodding his head, and you know, it's clicking for him, like giving him a visualization of what to expect, right? Because he's like just walking into like totally unfamiliar like territory. And so it was cool to just give him that. And I kind of kept my eyes on him, and he just looked like he was comfortable. And it felt like I did something to help him. So that was just cool. And I think now I'm just getting like caught up in like that particular story. And I think it's just, like the theme of this episode is like just how you go about teaching people things. It matters. Another story that like comes to mind, and again, like I said, this was going to be a shameless jiu-jitsu like episode. Part of the reason why I even wanted to make this like an episode is that there was all these other like things that kind of like occurred that I'm just like, oh, okay, there's like a common kind of like thing here. And so like another story to kind of tell is, I was white belt, and I remember I had just started, or I had like essentially graduated to like the advanced class, right? You need to be like in the fundamentals class for like about 6 months or so until like you learn how this stuff works, so that when you do spar eventually like live rounds, you know what's going on and you're not going to get hurt, right? You actually just kind of understand how these things work. So anyways, I remember it was like one of my first times like doing like live training, and it was definitely scary. I was like, whoa, okay, so this is like full force. Whoa, this person's like is coming after me. And I remember like I'm just trying to find my way. Like I literally don't know. Like I literally just started like to spar, right? Like it's a whole different game. It's a whole different thing. It's different than like drilling. It's a whole different thing. It's a real like live round. And I remember training with some folks that were like really supportive. Like they understood what it was that I was trying to do, and like they weren't going hard, and they would carry a tone where they would be supportive. And they would understand what it was like that I was trying to do, and they would give like helpful like advice or tips, but it was always in like a tone that was very like supportive. And then I remember training with some folks where it was like I did something wrong, like I exposed like an arm in such a way that like led to like a submission from them, right? And I remember some of them would actually raise their voice at me, saying like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You need to like look out for X, Y, and Z. And I was like, whoa. And just trying to like keep the peace, just let them whatever, right? I didn't just kind of let them like be that way. Granted, these people are like low, they're not like professors or black belts. These are all like lower ranking people. These are people like of my like peer group, right? Like the same like rank. And I should also mention too that the people that are supportive are the people in the higher ranks, like the black belts and the brown belts and the purple belts and the blue. There's a lot, but I don't know. It's almost interesting too. Like now, as I'm telling this story, like those people that were like would get angry at somebody else were like, you shouldn't be doing that. They're actually, I haven't seen them for quite some time. I don't even know if they still train anymore. But the reason why the stories resonate with me is that it's something that I think does transfer in a professional context where like, and even as I'm just telling these stories, I'm like, God, there's so many other like tangential things to now talk about here where it's like, what drives a person to even have that type of like attitude to where they're getting upset at another person for making a mistake? Like, it's almost like the quintessential example of like, does that say more about how they feel than the situation at hand? Like, is it some sort of like projection of sorts? I don't know. I think that's a topic like worth exploring for like another day. But that was another like example. And I'll tie all this like back together. I just feel like kind of telling stories, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of fun for me personally to like reflect back on all these things with regard to this episode. But there's another story too, is I remember, it wasn't too long ago, but it was live training. So it was sparring. And I remember I was like off to the side on the bench, just taking a break. And I remember, I don't know, this kid must have been like maybe like 18, 19, 20 or something like that. And, he was struggling. He was doing good, but he was like struggling. And he basically had like an opportunity for like an armbar. And then he missed it. And so somebody off to the side, and I can't remember, I don't know if it was like a parent or if it was a teammate, I can't remember. But I just remember the person saying out loud, like, armbar, armbar, armbar. And just the tone of that person, I was like, why are you saying this? And to this kid, like, I don't know. I just thought it was just kind of like weird. And then I was like watching the round, right? And I couldn't help but get the feeling that like he froze, like this person who was training froze and didn't really know how to advance to a position that would have been a dominant like position for him. And so the round went through and it was over and whatever. And then oddly enough, I got matched up with him for another round. And I just remember like I asked him, I was like, and I forgot how I brought it up. It was in a disarming way, but it was like, basically I'm asking the question of like, do you know how to do an armbar from here? And, the situation, it was a disarming, or it was done like in a disarming way. Like there just wasn't any ego, and he felt comfortable answering the question, and the response was no. Like he kind of like forgot, or I said something like I was like watching it out there, and it looked like just whatever, right? But anyways, and so we spent that round where I would it would be like sparring, and then I would like set it up in such a way where then he could train the armbar. And we agreed on that. Like let's put some like resistance on this, and then you could try to like learn how that move works, and we can just drill that over and over for this round. And we did that, and he got it. And then that round's over, and then just because I'm old and I'm tired, I wanted to take another break. And so then I'm back on the bench, and then I watch him spar with somebody else, and I just watched him, like, I don't know, after like a minute or two, he just like threw that armbar. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, it was like, I guess the reason why I'm bringing up that story is, and I'll tie it back through into the entire episode, but it's just like, there's this weird, it's not weird. I don't know. What am I trying to say, Chris? Like this observation of like, there's the common like theme in this, and even taking it back to the first story with the guy who it was his first day outside of his trial class. He could have, like, if I wasn't there and he asked somebody else who was maybe kind of, a little bit more like filled with ego, or just kind of a jerk, or, has a propensity to be a jerk, that experience could have been a different thing for him. He could have, if God, like, I don't know. I just think about it. I'm like, what if he asked somebody and they like laugh, like, oh, stupid white belt or something like that. Like, that's extreme. That would never happen at my school at all. But like, let's just, for the sake of conversation, just say that that was a thing. Like, that dude's experience is just shot. Like, it's over. It's over. Like before it even started. Same thing goes, God, what was my second story? Third story was the one with the arm bar. Oh yeah, the second story was about me. But you know, whatever, that's whatever. I guess what I'm just trying to say is that, like, being a jerk about something, you know, and that can come up in different ways. There's huge costs associated to that. And just want to make sure this mic is still good. So I think, let me try to weave all these stories like back together. It's just like how you go about teaching somebody something, it matters, and it compounds over time, and it can be ruined in like just a moment. Like, you could, you know, I don't know, the whole concept of like teaching and coaching and mentoring and like leading is such a fragile thing, and sometimes it's frustrating, many times it's rewarding, and there's just a lot of pressure at all times, kind of thing. I don't know, that sounds kind of like a dire straits extreme thing. You know, I think if you really care about the people in your charge and the people around you, I do think it does tend to be easier. I mean, it just is easier. Like, if you care about a person and their growth, you know, I don't know. I mean, now I have to like explore that whole topic, but grab some water really quick because that was a lot of talking, and I'm gonna try to figure out how to thread this thing. So give me 1 second. Okay, let's keep it going. Yeah, I think just having a heavy hand as a leader is really never a good thing. I mean, I can't really think to a time where that is appropriate. I mean, I could have a whole other like episode about like there are certain times when maybe that is what is needed, but on a general like day-to-day standpoint, I don't think that that's ever the case. I think it's only if there's truly like a deep existential like threat of sorts, like if there's something really at risk, then, you know, arguably you could have a little bit like more of a heavy hand. But again, that's a whole other episode to explore. But like on a day-to-day standpoint, you don't need that. And so I think, you know, what I want this episode to kind of like the general like theme here is like through those types of approaches, right? Through those stories like that I told, is like if you go one route, the yield is essentially like a fear-based environment, versus the other one I would like to think is more of like a growth-based environment, right? An environment of like principles and understanding and, you know, drilling and reps and like learning and failing, like learning and failing. Thank you. In its most like truest form or context or whatever. Now I just feel like I'm rambling. So let's do this because I want to get into the exploratory questions. But yeah, let's move on to question number one. Question number one: what did I actually like give that like new guy today? Was it like belt tying help, or was it psychological safety? Man, I cannot believe how much my speech impediment just showed up there. Apologies about that, guys. Yeah, I think, yeah, the reason why I even wanted to do this episode was really because of this first question. Like, I gave this person psychological safety, and I that's why I felt as happy as I did, like after my interactions with him, because I could tell that he was a nervous. He was nervous, and rightfully so. I remember my first day. Goddamn, like I totally remember it. And even the professor that I trained with, like I still like we remember it. It's cool, and that was like freaking almost 3 years ago. Um, so it means a lot. I mean, even as I just say that story, like I remember how somebody treated me 3 years ago. That's huge. Like that obviously counts. It means something, and I'm so glad that I was there to give that to somebody. I'm glad that I was the person who did that, and I feel like, I don't know, even as I just say that and I tell this story, I'm just like, wow, that's so freaking cool. But let's tie this back to like an organizational effectiveness kind of like context, right? The same principles apply in a professional space. And it's that's part of the reason why I wanted to tell story number, I believe it was story number 3, which was the kid trying to do an armbar, right? And it's like one person's observing the situation and they're saying, hey, armbar, you got da, 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 da. And it's just like, okay, hold on, pause, time out. Is it possible that this kid just forgot and just doesn't know and he just needs a little bit of like coaching or direction? I'm like, I mean, and that's how I felt. And that's why I did like what I did the next round. So like me spending 6 minutes with one kid, I gave him the skills that he needed to overcome like this challenge or whatever. And then like lo and behold, the next round, he's just throwing them. And I find that interesting because it's like, I find that interesting because the level of effort to like intervene and create like a sense of like safety for this person, or like that they could even acknowledge that like they don't know how to do a thing. And then 6 minutes is nothing. And he learns it. I'm like, what? Yeah, this is great. Like, why don't, like, this just translates to so many things in life where it's just giving people, like, not the benefit of the doubt, but it's just like, I don't think that there's ever a reason to like raise your voice at somebody or get upset with somebody. And again, that's why I was trying to tell, that was my point in the second story, was like, you know, and again, I think it's an episode, I think it's worth exploring in an entirely other episode, but I'm like, if somebody's getting upset with you, like, again, like, does it say more about them than it does you? Like, it's just, I remember when it first happened. And I basically put my arm out too far where it was like a key lock of sort or an arm bar, well, like whatever. I just did something that wasn't good. And it wasn't good, and they like won that round. I tapped. Okay. But then for them to be like, hey man, you shouldn't be doing that. You got to make sure you keep your elbows tight and da 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 da. And I've seen it. It's actually funny. I've actually seen it. It's maybe the analytical part of me just keeps tabs on these things just because I'm maybe just curious about it. But I see this type of behavior. I've seen it, top of mind between maybe 3 or 4 training partners, and it's just I'm so fascinated about what that is, because it's it's not helpful. And it's always from lower ranking folks too, which is very fascinating. And I wonder just what that is and what that says. But I guess when I think about that, the reason I think maybe why my mind is so curious about it is I see it in other contexts. I see it in I see it just in life in general. And maybe I'm just trying to find an understanding of like what that is, so then I know how to. I don't know. I just want to have a better understanding of it. But at the end of the day, what I'm just observing and what I feel is that it's not helpful. It's not good for a team. It's not good for it's not good. It's just not good. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not productive. And yeah, I just think I don't know. I think the more, it's almost like what this episode is me like brushing on this topic of psychological safety, I guess, or how to get through to people. Like maybe this is like a intro episode for another like separate like episode of sorts, or maybe like a series of them. I just I just remember when when the most recent story happened, where I'm telling you guys about the new kid, it's his first class, all that, right? I just remember when that happened, or I came home from training that night, and it was just a fun night. It was cool to hang out with like the crew, and like we're having a good time. And I just remember I was like, I got to write an episode about this. Like it stoked me out that I could help this kid out. And then, as I was writing the outline, and even as I'm talking right now, it's bringing back all these other thoughts and memories, and I'm just finding patterns here. And I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting when I look back at like the leaders that I've worked with, the managers, like the teachers, literally anybody who was in like a leadership position, and how much I appreciated that. And I think anecdotally, I just look at these stories and I think that those people appreciate that. So now I'm personally just curious, what is this? Why does this matter? How is it like replicated? How can it be scaled? Where does the opposite come from? How can it be tempered? What's really going on here? I don't know. I'm just, whoa. I'm gonna grab some more water because I feel like I've been talking for a while now, and I'm gonna probably end question 1 here pretty soon. So give me 1 second. You know what? As I drink that water, I'm gonna go ahead and just say, let's wrap question 1, and we're gonna move to question number 2. Question number 2, when someone screws up, what's the difference between correcting them in a way that shrinks them, like versus a way that teaches them? I don't really know exactly how to answer that question. I just think when somebody screws up, what's the difference between correcting them in a way that shrinks them versus a way that teaches them? What's the difference between it? Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think of that question is like short term and long term. Like you could say, if you go the shrinking route, so to speak, right? Like in like a demeaning, quote unquote way, or like in an aggressive way. Yeah, you could argue that you're going to solve the problem in the short term, right? Because you're taking action on it and you're pointing out the correction, and maybe they'll feel like they're forced to make a correction of sorts, and they'll do it. But the cost of that is maybe they're going to be more at like more. I think it just creates fear. That's what I'm saying. I think like when you do that, if you correct with a heavy hand, you're creating a culture, or you're creating an environment of fear. And I think this could all be a whole other episode, depending on the context. Maybe that is part of the intent. Maybe that is the strategic goal. And I think that's a whole other topic for a whole other conversation. But if you go the route of like principle-based supportive, conversational, nuanced, asking questions, right? Yeah, it takes a little bit more effort, but they're going to fix it. And I would argue this, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't consider when making these assessments, is that I think one of the bigger things is you not only created an environment of like psychological like safety, but you gave the time and the effort to teach them a fundamental principle. And you guys have heard me talk about this throughout so many episodes, but like I really am just like a principle-based guy. That sounds so dumb to say out loud, or like a fundamental. I just like core concepts that are like universally applicable, because then it gives me like ground to stand on. And that as I'm like learning other skills, I'm tying them back to the principles or like the fundamentals of like a given thing, right? And so it actually makes it easier for it makes it easier for the advanced concept to click in my brain, because I'm tying it back to something that is a fundamental based thing. And so I think that like when you take the time to teach people, you're also teaching them that, right? You're taking the time to explain to them how or why something works or does what it does. And then you can say like, hey, you kind of see how it's like tied back to this, right? I remember, and again, this is a shameless jiu-jitsu episode. I remember when I first started training, like there was all this, I remember in the fundamentals class, right? You've got like professors talking about how like jiu-jitsu is a game of like angles, right? You never attack or like defend something straight on. You're always looking to cut an angle of sorts, right? Like whether it's to create some sort of like a frame, or to like change your guard, or to grab like an underhook of sorts, right? Like everything's at like an angle, right? It's never a straight line, right? And there's like all these other like little small concepts where it's like, again, with the angles in mind too, right? Like the concept of crossing the center line, right? So if you look at like your body, right? Like your arms, right? Your arms can be attacked, right? But if your arms are tight in here and your elbows are tight, no one's really going to be able to grab your elbow, right? Or to extend your elbow in such a way, right? But if you cross the center line, right? Meaning if you can get my elbow to go across the center line of my body, now it's exposed to a hyperextension of sorts, right? And so it's like, I just remember professors and coaches like saying that, and I'm like, I don't get it. And like, I mean, like I get it like in theory, but like after like what, 3 years or so, I don't know. That's what's so cool about the sport too, is like you just like learn like more and more things. But it's like oh, I get it now. I understand now the concept of like crossing the center line, right? Yeah, I tangented on that one. Let me try to bring this one back. When somebody screws up, what's the difference between correcting them in a way that shrinks them versus a way that teaches them? Oh, that's right. You get the opportunity to teach them principles, right? And then that helps with understanding advanced concepts. And I think just net total of like like when I just look at it from the first like story I told, is what I communicate or what I gave that person was psychological safety, in the sense of like, there are people here who will help you. You're doing something that's very intimidating. Somebody was there to like support you. I gave him like a visualization of like what the class looks like. So now he's not feeling scared of, or at least anxious about like what the next like hour is going to look like. I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, it's the reason why I wrote this episode, but like, I still, again, it's been 3 years and I remember my first class. I remember the professor that I was teamed up with, and it's just huge. It means a lot. And I just think, the same can be said in a professional context, right? Like you got like a new hire, right? They're skilled. That's why you hired them, right? But maybe they don't know certain specifics. You would never fault them for it, or you shouldn't fault them for it. I mean, now we're getting into a different episode of like when to and when not to do certain things, but it's just like give people the benefit of the doubt. And yeah, I don't know, this is a whole other episode as well too, but it's just like, for instance, let's take the last story that I just told, which was the story of the kid, trying to do an armbar. He got a little bit lost, right? Okay, so like in my story, it was cool. We kind of solved the problem in 6 minutes. But let's say, for instance, that we didn't, and he goes to spar that next round, and he's still struggling, right? Me personally, and again, this is a whole other episode, I wouldn't take it personally. Like, I mean, if I saw him still struggling with it, I wouldn't go like, oh, I suck at, like, I'm like a teacher, like I'm really bad at teaching, and like, oh, like woe is me, and I tried, and he's still not getting it. It's like, it's terrible, it's awful. If that were to happen, I'd be like, okay, let's kind of see what's going on here. Okay, well, no, he didn't get it. He didn't get the arm bar, but he got steps 1 and 2. Okay, so he gets steps 1 and 2. Maybe he's missing step 3, and like I wouldn't get pissed at the person. I'd be like, hey, you want to go like another round? I was kind of like watching you, and I feel like you were almost there. I wouldn't, maybe not in that like way, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? I wouldn't get upset with the person. I would just go, and like that's the interesting thing too, is that like, and again, it's another episode. It's not a binary thing. Like, you guys have heard me talk about it like in other episodes. Like an arm bar, like there's 3. If you're trying to execute one move, right? Let's just say it's broken down into like 3 parts, right? But if people look at things from a binary perspective of like you either you did or did not do the thing, I think that that's a little unfair, and I think that needs to be kept in check, or at least judged in like in a judicious way, because I could argue, yeah, while the outcome may not have happened, they did get parts 1 and 2 right. They missed part 3, so now that's just a little bit of incremental training to get them like back on track. But what people don't understand, and again, it's an episode for another day. If you come in with a heavy hand, you will immediately lose the trust of your team. I really don't care what anyone else says. Like, that's a price that you pay. You may get the outcomes that you want, but make no mistake, you have created an environment that is a fear-based driven environment. So you will get the results that like that you want in the short term. But I think like if your goal, and I just think it should be anybody's goal in any sort of context, is constant advancement, which means you're always exploring new territory. So it's new by the definition of it. It's innovative. You're doing something that is new. You have to have a sense of psychological like safety to explore those things. And if you strip that away, if you chip it away, or it just gets annihilated over a heavy hand on something that doesn't matter. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, as a leader, not me, writ large, we should all be considering the costs of our actions. Yeah, because there's consequences to everything. And I don't know, for me, because again, I like drawing a parallel to things. Like, take the 3 stories I just told you. Imagine what the story would be like if I took the heavy-handed approach, right? I don't think it goes anywhere good. I don't think it does, right? And especially in like a communal like you know, activity or sport like jiu-jitsu, like, I don't know. That could be a whole other episode too. Like, we're all trying to do really hard things like together. That's what the sport is. And that's what makes it a beautiful thing. And we're all supportive of one another. Why can't the same be in everything else in life? That's what I'm trying to say. I think that's a good place to end question 2. I'm going to end it right there. All right, question number 3. If I'm leading people at work, what would it look like to coach like a good training partner? Clear, principled, and supportive without like getting soft. I don't know. I think this is an interesting question. I think maybe it's something that I've been trying to articulate, or to kind of like articulate for myself. And maybe even in the past response that I had, I mean, maybe you could kind of almost tell that there was like a level of like emotion with me and like the values that I have. But like, and again, I'm almost kind of using this episode for me personally to almost explore and understand a topic of like why this means something to me. And like what comes to my mind is, you know, how I was answering question number 2 is just, these are the values that I have and why, right? And I almost think that like, the why part is the important part, right? Like I'm just looking at the part of this question, like without without like getting soft. Just for the record, G's are really hard for me, so sorry you had to suffer through that. I don't think it's about getting, I don't know. Maybe I just don't like this question, because here's where my mind is at, is that if people understand why you value the things that you do and how they're like, how, and like why you value them and their practical application, like maybe that's like also a key part too, is that things just become, things are neither good nor bad. God, like not good nor bad. That's not right. What I'm trying to say is like, without getting soft, like if I'm leading people at work, what would it look like to a coach, like a good training partner, clear, principled, and supportive without getting soft? I guess maybe what I'm just trying to like understand in myself is that like, these are the values that I hold true, and here's the reason why, and this is why it's a benefit to the individual, to the smaller team, and the broader team, right? And this is why we do these things. And I don't know, maybe it's a detriment. Maybe that's not right for me, but that's how my brain at least currently sees it. And I just think like the reason why I say that is that like it's not even like a case of like arguing. It's a case, or it's not a case, not that it's a case of like arguing. It's like this is just why we do these things, right? And I feel like if they are not like in a virtuous way, but like it's a benefit. It's a benefit to everybody. It's a benefit. It's just a benefit to everybody. Like it's a nice even split where, God, I don't even know how to answer this question. And like, maybe I don't know. Maybe I just don't like this question. Maybe I just think like, maybe I think it's the wrong question. Maybe I think that the reason why this question is maybe upsetting is that everybody looks at things that way, where it's just like, you don't want to be too hard, you don't want to be too soft. And it's like, I almost think maybe that's wrong. Maybe like what I think we should be is more like a value base. Like why we do and don't do things should be a value-based thing, and communicating the value of or lack thereof is the important part, right? Like let the value drive the alignment. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. I think maybe the reason why, and this is almost, like, okay, let me walk this one back. I think the reason why I don't like this question is because I feel like in my career, I've seen people just look at things that way. Like, you gotta be tougher, you gotta be nicer, and this whole almost like capturing and co-opting of like the word like empathy, in 2026. I don't know. It's just like, I just feel like it's the wrong thing. I feel like we're talking about the wrong topic. I feel like we're trying to distill something down into something that it shouldn't be. I don't know. Here's the other thing that like comes to mind. Okay, so like let's look at this question because it's really trying to get at like, are you playing the hard angle or like the softer and like understanding angle? Okay, fine. Let's just look at it through that lens just so we can continue to explore the question. And this actually happened like recently. And again, this is a shameless jiu-jitsu episode, so I'm just going to keep trucking along on that. So anyways, last week, sparring with somebody, and maybe I just really like arm bars, but I had them in like an inverted like arm bar. So I basically have my head down like on the mat, right? And my professor, he says something, he says something to me, giving me tips on the arm bar. But then equally, I could hear his voice change. And he was saying that I need to tilt my head in a certain way, because if I keep my head like it was, if my opponent rolls me, I could injure myself. And he's, God, like, I don't even know, 25 years as a black belt experienced and can tell this stuff from like a mile away. And it was also funny too, because it was like, I don't even think he could actually like fully see where my head like was positioned. He could just tell from the position of like legs on the other side what was going on, which that in and of itself is really amazing. And so I could hear his tone change. And then I understood what he was saying, and then I turned my head, and then he basically confirmed like, yep, that's good. And I confirmed back to him. Granted, this is from like 25 like feet away, and I'm just scrambling on the ground or whatever. But the reason why I bring up that story was like the tone was actually an important thing, because, and maybe this is just what I'm like adept to, maybe this is just me. All right, whatever. Let me try to finish the story. Was I could hear in his voice, hey, like, you need to make this correction. Like, something bad can happen if you don't make this correction. And I could hear that in his voice, and I didn't get upset or upset or defensive about it. He didn't get upset or defensive about it. Like, it was just it was a matter of fact thing. And it was like, this is the social agreement. I am here to teach you this skill and to keep you safe. I can see that you are in a position which you're not like in a dire straits, but it could be not good. So it's my job to correct that. And that's what I love about, again, shameless jiu-jitsu episode. That is what this school is for. Like, this is the social agreement. Like, you're here to learn, I'm here to teach. Like, these are the values. This is why we do what we do. This is why we do whatever. And it's not about, and I mean, I don't know, you take any other sport, I'm sure we've all been to, just take anything that's like a skill, right? I think anytime that like, you know, you've been corrected with like a heavy hand, right? Yeah, you make the correction, totally. But what happens with the long-term cost, right? I don't know, I just think it's interesting. And I think the more I talk about it, it's just an episode. It's a longer episode for another day. And yeah, I don't know. I think just I'm looking at this question and I want to put a bow on it. I just want to like try to bring it home a little bit. I think the concept of like hard and soft, like are you like leading or correcting with a heavy hand or a soft hand? I don't know. I almost think it's the wrong question. I think it's the wrong approach. I think value-based alignment, and most importantly, the understanding of why, and that the why is, to a degree, I guess, maybe altruistic is the wrong word, but it's the first thing that comes to mind. It's, I don't know. Like I said, guys, this was something where, it was almost like an aha for me, where like I'm exploring this thought in my head, or I'm exploring this thought in real time because I'm trying to like name it and claim it, so to speak. Maybe I got somewhere. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. But maybe there's something in there for you. But let's just end that question there and we'll move on to the closing of the show. All right, here we are at the closing segment of the show. Let's kind of read back the theme here. The way you correct someone changes everything. I did not even think for a second that this episode was going to expand to so many topics, but what's so cool about this is that, these questions, they're never ending, and that's kind of the cool part. It's just, you solve one problem, it creates a new one, solve that, new one. I don't know, it's kind of cool. But just trying to figure out a way to bring this episode home. Like, the way you correct someone changes everything. I don't know, we started talking about a bunch of things. We're almost talking about like social contracts to a certain degree, right? Like what does it mean to, like, what are the values of the team and why? And God, I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to answer the question, and I think considering as far as I got in this episode today, like I think it would be a foolish thing to even, try to answer it, on the same day that I'm just asking the question. But I don't know. I think if I just had to like bring home this whole episode, I don't know. I feel like psychological safety is maybe the wrong term. This just kind of when working with Chat GPT on this, it's one of the terms that it turned up with. But maybe that's what it is. I mean, you think about the first three stories that I told you, and that's ultimately what it's doing, or like that's what it surrounds. It surrounds this kind of like psychological safety. And I just think, when you look at it again from an organizational effectiveness lens, right? Like if you go with the heavy hand approach, yeah, you fix the near-term problem. Totally got it. But you, at the cost of psychological like safety, so that if and when the team needs to embark on an endeavor into the unknown, which by default, you don't know. And if you don't have the safety to mess up or screw up as you're navigating the unknown, like, I don't know. It's an episode for another day, but like, I flash back literally past like 15 years, right? And I've seen it at like every like tier and echelon. It doesn't matter. Like if the team doesn't feel safe, the blame shift kind of starts to happen, right? I don't know. There's just where my head is at right now is like there's something that is comforting and more objectively driven of like a value-based alignment, right? Like, I don't know if it's like the right, and I think for me right now, my brain, it does this where it tries to draw a parallel to something else to try to understand the patterns from it to then apply it to a different context. But if I, again, shameless jiu-jitsu episode, but like there's a social contract between the professors and the coaches and like and the students, right? There's certain things, everybody plays a certain role, and there's certain like parameters and boundaries, and we all agree on them. And that allows us to do like learn new things and do complicated things and have fun and manage like the bullies, so to speak. You know, or that sounds extreme, but I'm just saying, like, there's something about an objective driven, or like I don't know what the words are, guys. I really don't. I hope, I'll figure it out eventually, but it's just like, it's an agreement. It's an agreement, right? And because there are set parameters, you're able to measure, performance against the parameter. That's what I'm saying. When you have a value-based, like driven kind of environment, it by default creates a parameter in which you're able to like measure performance against the parameter, right? And I think but then you also have to have the patience and the understanding of, if somebody doesn't know what to do, right, that you need to come in and intervene and coach. And, I think and that takes effort. And it takes patience. And I think, again, and I say it every episode, with all this complexity, like in modern work, like that takes time, it takes effort. And if you don't have any of that, then perhaps the default that you fall back on is like, well, you should know better kind of thing, right? But then my brain just goes, I don't think that that cost is worth it. And also I'm tired too. Like I don't have enough like time and energy either. And maybe it's just my brain, but it just goes, okay, well, I know that the right thing to do is to intervene. So now how can I optimize the intervention, right? And granted, you can only optimize things to a certain point, but I'd like to think that that's allowed me to maintain this, like the strategy, I guess. I don't know what the word is, but like, I never want to succumb to a heavy hand because I've just seen it. I've seen the consequences of it. And again, it's this short-term solve that creates a massive long-term problem. And I'm gonna grab some water. Maybe I'll end it after this drink. Let's just see. I don't know. I think, what a topic, right? What an interesting topic. Who would have thought some guy, first class for like jiu-jitsu, one random Saturday last week, spawns this episode, which then all of a sudden spawns all these other topics. And I go, where do I go from here? I don't know, guys. I do not know. I feel like what you're seeing right now is my brain just kind of going where it's like, okay, well, we got something new to explore, and maybe I'm just a little gassed today where I'm just like, or maybe it's just like honestly, truth be told, like I feel like I came to the realization that there's something like larger here, and I feel like I just peered into like an abyss. Like I'm peering over the edge, and I'm like, I don't know what's down here. Too much to explore, and I think it's just for another day. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys like feel the same way. Maybe as you guys are kind of hearing me talk through, you guys are you're going through your own thoughts too, and maybe you arrived at the same conclusion of sorts. And if that's the case, I would really like to hear about it. And honestly, I do think that like right now, like maybe the question is the thing that matters. Because like I'm realizing as I'm kind of like talking through all this, I'm like, I'm not asking the right question. I know I'm not. I know that like I have this like instinctual like feeling about something, right? But I know that I'm not asking the right question. So this is me soliciting to all of you who are watching this episode. If you can figure out what a good question is to kind of explore this topic further, I would personally appreciate it. But if not, it's cool too. We can just kind of see where time goes and what comes of it. And, maybe we'll just show up in another episode. But anyways, I think maybe I just ran out of steam, and that feels like a good little off-ramp there, where I think the net of all of this is psychological, like safety. It matters. How you go about creating it, episode for a different day. Let's not touch it right now. And that's the off-ramp, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Frame Found podcast. If it's your first episode, thank you for checking in or just checking it out. If you're curious about what this podcast is overall, please check out episode number 1. And for all those times that you heard me say the word check out episode number 2, where I talk about the speech impediment that I have and why I say that word to begin with. But yeah, again, thank you guys for checking out this episode, and looking forward to seeing you on next week's episode. Thanks, everybody.